Welcome to MedMen. My name is Pim. This is Andy.
And today we have a very special episode because we are joined by none other than Jessica Walker, our CMO here at MEDDICC. Welcome to the show, Jess.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I feel like I've been asking to come on to MedMen for about a year, so thank you.
You're normally the other side of the camera.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit weird being in the studio setting and not being sat with Ali right now. So but I'm enjoying this setup.
Yeah, well, welcome here. It's great to see you here. For those that don't know you, why don't you give us a brief introduction about who you are and how you got into marketing and all that kind of jazz?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it very brief. So I hated marketing about 10 years ago. I thought it was just a career for people who spent a lot of money. They ordered pens, they ordered water bottles, they went to trade shows. They didn't really do any actual work. I was very naive to think that. I started my career in construction and basically had the opportunity to move into marketing and realised the creative side of marketing was like what I absolutely love. So the brand aspect, actually talking to customers, and I just realised there's so much more to marketing than what I originally thought. It's not just pens and water bottles. We do like to spend money, but we like to make money too. So that's a little bit about me. And then now, obviously, I am Chief Media Officer at MEDDICC. I've been here for about 2.5 years and first time in SaaS and tech and sales, and before joining I knew nothing about MEDDICC or Andy Whyte, which I feel like is sacrilegious to admit.
Before we get into that, can we just double click on one small thing that you said there, because we were getting into the topic of marketing and you kind of hating it before, which is strong, but I definitely see where you're coming from there. But then you said media. Can we get a little bit into the difference there and how we think about that within MEDDICC? Yeah,
definitely. I feel like from a marketing and media perspective, I feel like marketing has gone through a lot of like digital change, and you'll see it on LinkedIn all the time. Everybody wants to be a media company, so media is like a big buzzword. But how we treat it at MEDDICC is that media is like this overarching umbrella. So everything rolls up into that. So our marketing is just another form of media. And we like to split it into two ways. We have like our brand and we have our marketing. And we say that our brand is our long-term activation and our marketing is our short-term activation. But ultimately, we function as a inside agency, as MEDDICC Media, but we very much have marketing as part of that.
An agency of one client.
Yes, one true client, MEDDICC.
Yeah, love that. We're going to talk a lot about M's today. I've just realised that. And because obviously there's M in media, M in marketing, M in CMO. But there is an M in MEDDICC. And one thing that ties it together is something that we're very pleased about, that our dear friend JJ, the CMO at CrowdStrike, says. What does she say about the M in MEDDICC?
Yeah, I recall this day. Like it was probably one of the best things I've ever heard, especially as a marketer myself. So JJ described the M in MEDDICC as marketing, so M for marketing instead of metrics, which I think was huge to have somebody like JJ vouch so strongly for MEDDICC.
Yeah, especially when you think about CrowdStrike as the brand they are. You got to probably, I imagine her top 3 achievements is probably number 1, of course, come up with M being for marketing in MEDDICC. Number 2, maybe the endeavors with motorsport they have with CrowdStrike on the Mercedes F1 car and all that kind of stuff. And then a couple of Super Bowl adverts, no big deal. But the number 1 there being for sure marketing and M being in MEDDICC.
It was definitely one of my highlights of working at MEDDICC, having JJ say that. So
yeah. Yeah, for sure. But I think it'd be interesting. I mean, the purpose of us getting together today is very much to talk about the M, the marketing in MEDDICC, and how, newcomers to the show, we may not know this, but regular listeners and viewers will know that we very much like to describe MEDDICC, MEDDPICC as being a common language. And as regular listeners will know, we think about the common language being not just this language that is just commonly spoken as in, I know what MEDDICC is, but it being this common language for the whole go-to-market team, for the whole customer lifecycle, which of course involves marketing heavily throughout that customer lifecycle. From the someone coming, as you said, from the outside coming into MEDDICC, being right at the coalface, the sharp end of this. What's it been like, your experience about learning about the framework, the common language, and applying it to what you do in your role as CMO?
I think the first thing I'd say is if you're a marketer looking at MEDDICC, if you go through the MEDDPICC Masterclass, we'll get the link for the MEDDPICC Masterclass somewhere on here. We're not like reinventing the wheel. So the framework that you learn MEDDPICC, it's different terminology to what you would use as a marketer, but it's not anything new. And also it can really tie in with stuff that we already use as marketing teams. So any processes or methodologies that we already use, MEDDICC just can overlap the top. The other thing I'd say is when I first learned about MEDDICC 2.5 years ago, I have a very different feeling to how I talk about MEDDICC now, and it's taken me a while to get to speed with MEDDICC. But the biggest benefit for me is that go-to-market like synchronization, really. Like myself and Pim, we are able to communicate so easily because we have this common language, and that's really for me like the huge benefit of MEDDICC. But not only from like a revenue perspective or a sales perspective, with product as well. So I think it's taking what we already know as marketers, but using this common language and being able to apply it across the go-to-market team is just like is huge.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the things that people would start, the term go-to-market for me is not a new term, but it's a term that seems to be flavor of the month at the moment. Everybody seems to be putting the word go-to-market in front of things that were formerly revenue, before that was sales. The classic example of that is that we've seen, the SKO, sales kickoff, was then revenue kickoff, and now it's GKO, go-to-market kickoff. And so it's a good thing for sure. It's great for our industry because it's actually best for our customers, because the more cohesive the go-to-market team is, the more cohesive the message and experience customers get at the end of that. So that's great. But I think like the big opportunity with go-to-market lies in bringing that whole cycle together. And it's actually not just, I think a lot of people think a go-to-market is starting at the top of the funnel, being the customer funnel. I think about that top of that funnel, and the go-to-market should start right back with the design of the product, the creation of the product. And so we work closely in good organizations with product teams who are, the better the product team, the closer they are to the customer, and the closer they are to the customer's problems and all that type of stuff. But what we know is that customer teams have to operate a lot of the time in the dark. They have to be proactive to go and speak to customers. They have to actually get time in front of customers to get that information back, or they have to go and sort of survey or to interview salespeople or people that are talking to the customers. And that's not a good way about doing anything at all. It becomes very subjective in that example. So like what we love to think about that go-to-market cycle, that whole life cycle as let's start with the product, because ultimately at the end of the life cycle is making happy customers who renew with you and spend more money with you and are just happy. And so MEDDICC starts there, because if you're a product expert, you're going to want to know what is it that our customers need. So what pain do they have? And then when we are engaging and winning with those customers and solving that pain with our solution, what is the value they're getting? What's the metrics they're getting from that? What's the delta of value they're getting? But just as much as it's about seeing what's working, it's also about seeing what's not working, and having that ability to say, okay, and this comes down to the decision criteria of like, when we win, the last 10 deals we've won because we've had this one thing that differentiates us from our competition. That's great to know that, but also likewise, what about when we lose? What is it that we're missing? And can we feed that information back to the product team so they can evaluate whether it's worth them enhancing that, right? Is that like, and that's before it even gets to your world. But then when it does get to your world, in a world without MEDDPICC, that proposition comes through from marketing, say, we've made this new module or this new feature or whatever it is. Go tell everyone about it. And so what marketing teams typically will do is they'll do, what they know best, and they sort of apply really great work. There's nothing going wrong here. The problem we see is that they're doing that in isolation. So product teams got their own language, marketing teams got their own language. Then it goes into like they're trying to pull the customer meetings in, and they've got their own language, which is, often orientated around the salesperson's needs and the SDR's needs of like banters. Is there a deal here for me? And then by the time the salesperson picks it up, they've not got a great handover because we've gone from one language to another language to another language. Now we're on our fourth language. And then the salesperson's often got more than one language as well. And so it starts to get a bit crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think if we then take that back to marketing in this context and about, into our collaboration, for example, you can see it in resources that your team is building, right? Whether it's a resource for a prospect, so that we are throughout that cycle that Andy is talking about, that we can influence decision criteria right from the get-go, and not that we're talking about something else when someone first lands on our website, and then as soon as they get in front of someone from the sales team, we're suddenly speaking about this other thing, right? So it's like informing everybody in the go-to-market team, but also across the various stages of the customer engagement model, really, to work in much more cohesion. Because at the end of the day, like if we know why we win and why customers decide to partner with us, and we infuse that back into resources and we educate them in a very cohesive manner, like everybody wins. And in your example just there, you're also making sure that the buying experience isn't like this kind of like clunky,
disconnected.
Yeah, fully disconnected bad experience. Because like even if you have a very big pain as like a prospect and as like a sales team and as a go-to-market team, you have the best possible solution in solving for that pain, it's still not a foregone conclusion, right? And so as go-to-market teams, I think it's all about connecting that whole journey. And what does that better than a true common language that everybody can tap into? So I think a question to you, because you said like, hey, from my experience previously, we were using a number of things already. So this isn't necessarily anything new. We typically connect it back to value, stakeholders, and process. So what would be an example of that in your world, like before MEDDICC?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the one obvious thing that comes to mind for me is in terms of like use cases and customer stories or testimonials. We as marketers obviously want to use that as much as we can. We want to, promote how, the social proof, this like proof of value that customers are getting exactly what we say. And obviously it's more powerful if a customer's saying it versus what we say. And I think typically marketers get lost in like really clever messaging about the customer, or it's about getting, a glossy like brochure with the customers' faces on it and some nice quotes and some big font and stuff like that. Whereas what has been like I hate this word, but what has been a game changer since learning MEDDICC is all about metrics and M1s. We're doing a lot of work at the moment in terms of how we position M1s as a business, but also within like our MEDDICC like knowledge. And that's all about bringing like decision criteria into it, pain, what value we're actually providing. And I think this M1 story that we have got available to us at MEDDICC is bringing all of that common language and all of that resource from all of the different departments in the go-to-market team to actually talk about something compelling to the customer, or prospects down the line, rather than just, this customer really liked our product.
Yeah, and it's in a very consistent way as well. I remember you saying this, like it must have been earlier this week or maybe last week, like ahead of a session with one of our customers. We were on their website, right? And we were looking at their case studies, and it seemed as though like every case study had a completely different format. And so if you talk about the consistency of the buying journey and the experience that a prospect will have, like that was way off, right? And in itself, like those case studies might still hold like a lot of value, a big delta in between the without and the with state. So the ingredients are all there, but the way that it was kind of displayed in a cohesive manner was completely lacking, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's, like you say, that's not ideal for your prospect who is, on your website and they're going, okay, I've heard, we know all the reasons why they could be there. There's lots of different reasons, but if they're looking at case studies, they're trying to get a feel for what value it is you bring, right? They're probably trying to reinforce their instincts, their gut that says, this is interesting to me, right? And if you think about why they're trying to look at case studies, a lot of the time, I believe, they're trying to arm themselves with the rationale as to why we should investigate or evaluate this solution. And so this is a bit like the same sort of stuff as champion building, where you want to help the person you're selling to be able to be a kind of a mini salesperson for you. You want them to empower them to be able to sell internally for you. And so if you've got, like to that example that Pim used there, where I was on this, this is a great company. It's a customer of ours, actually, a new customer of ours, who have a really strong proposition, great logos, just love it. I love their proposition. I love what they do. and they're great people. But on their website, if I'm a prospect and I'm trying to figure out what they do, I'm going from one page it's talking about, you know, the solution. One page it's talking about, it doesn't mention the solution at all. Another page, it's, you know, sometimes you go on a page and it's got lots of really solid metrics there. Sometimes the metrics are missing. And that tells me, I'm like, well, if there's metrics on that page and not that one, that means that they haven't actually measured the value and all that sort of stuff. So it's harder for me as an advocate to digest and then communicate. And that's just the customer, right? But let's just think about the sales team. I think we have this view in our industry of sales that the sales team are going to be like walking, talking sort of Wikipedias of our solution, right? And sure, that would be we know that that's a really key tenet of like a skill that a salesperson has is, you know, they have to have, you know, sales craft is of course one thing. They have to have knowledge of their industry and knowledge of their products. And of course they have to have knowledge of the prospective customer they're selling to so that they're credible. But they're not, you know, the average tenure of an AE is what, like under 2 years now or something crazy. So how long is it going to take you to become an expert in a product? Surely 6 months, a year. So there's at least a half of a salesperson's life in an average tenure where they're not going to have all those answers. So put aside just the customer marketing, if you're able to pull together all of these great examples of value you've provided, but bring it into a cohesive common language that the whole go-to-market team can use and digest, and everyone will use it differently, right? My favorite way of describing how we talk about an M1 is to use the kind of the technical term of there being the front end of the website and the back end of the website, right? The M1 and MEDDICC in value and positioning, it's the back end, it's the code, right? So it's like you said earlier, it's the pain that we solve. So without us, you have this pain, and the implications of that pain are this, you know, bad situations. We get that really concise. We understand, hey, before that customer worked with us, without us, they had what? What was the situation? And then we look at the with us. Now they're with us. What's the value that they get? What's this utopia state that they're enjoying? And then we look at the delta between the two states, and we're able to get some measurement of like the impact there. We also want to think about, well, if we wanted to take another customer or even look at this customer about how they went from the without state to with state, what would they need? What's the criteria they need? What's the decision criteria they need? So we build that in. Who cared? Who was implicated? It was going to be the champion. It was going to be the economic buyer. Who did we beat as the competition? All of those elements are really critical to create the components of a value proposition. So that's the back end. And then the marketing team, they go and they take that data and put the front end on it, which could be a pull-up banner at an exhibition. It could be a tweet. It could be the headline on a website. It could be a long case study. It could be a white paper. It could be a video. But the point is, we've got the same background, the same back end of those components. And I think a great example of this is, I know at the moment we're working on a buyer's guide for our customers buying from us. Why don't you talk a bit about the idea behind that and some of the MEDDICC like sort of influence that goes into it?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd say is like MEDDICC as who we are, like we are a startup, right? Mm-hmm. So we're still building these things ourselves. So if you look on our website today, you'll look at the case studies and you might not see as many as what we want because we're still building it and we're still taking on everything that we're learning as well. And I think the buyer's guide is a great example of that. We've never had a buyer's guide at MEDDICC before, and we've started to put that into fruition. So we were kind of briefed by the sales teams, which is great because obviously we do have such a good relationship with the sales teams that they can come to us and say, look, we really need this. And we're like, okay, how do we do it? But the buyer's guide for us it's going to live on our website, and it's going to be a potentially like downloadable resource. And essentially it's to arm potential prospects with information that they need about implementing MEDDICC and potential partners and what they should look out for. Now it's kind of like a win-win for us because the document is kind of armed with, reverse trap setting, decision criteria. So things in there that our competition don't have, we've put in there because obviously we want our prospects to go and look at our competition and be like, do you have this? Do you have that? And they're like, no, but MEDDICC do. So we've put those things in there, but essentially the document talks to the three, types of decision criteria, has that reverse trap setting in there. And the idea is it's not a hard sell about MEDDICC and about what we do, but it's a guide for prospects to use, and then they've got all the information they need about what we do.
Yeah, and I think like the sort of rationale for this document, everyone understands the purpose of a buyer's guide, but for us it's like we operate in this environment where MEDDICC is almost like an open source framework, which is a real strength. And like we say, not all MEDDICC is equal. And we've taken this, framework and have not just expanded it in its core function for sales, but we've expanded it, improved it to be usable for the whole go-to-market team, like we talked about. So the challenge we have as a business, and one of the reasons why this buyer's guide is so important for us, is that decision criteria when it comes to a lot of our customers will have a scenario where there'll be an event, which is normally a quarter end, a year end, or something like that, that's typically probably not gone as well as it should have done, or as they were expecting it to, perhaps is the better way of describing that. And then, so someone, and this is a frequent one, where someone on the board will be like, well, you need MEDDICC, because all the companies out there that we know that don't, that forecast accurately, that don't have surprises, don't have deals falling off, all that kind of stuff, they use MEDDICC. There's a lot more that they do than MEDDICC, of course, but that's, and so that person goes, okay, we need to go and get MEDDICC. And then they'll come often with little understanding about the breadth of what you can get, and they'll turn up and they'll think, okay, well, MEDDICC is, we go and talk to one organization, they'll say, well, MEDDICC is just this bit, MEDDICC just tells you which bones are broken. It's not going to tell you, it's not going to prevent you from breaking bones, and it's not going to help you heal the bones, which is mad, by the way. But then they'll say you need this other thing and this other thing and this other thing, and we would say, well, actually, no, MEDDICC does all of that in our mind. And so the buyer's guide really comes into play there, where we're saying, by the way, if this is what you need, this is how we help. But also, what a lot of, I think, our buyers don't think is we take a step back is actually you probably have all of these problems and all of these opportunities across your go-to-market we can help with, and we can help solve lots of those problems. But I think from your perspective, even though it's a bit meta to talk about using MEDDICC in a MEDDICC buyer's guide, but I think that buyer's guide itself is like, it's basically a decision criteria influence tool, we should call it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of exactly what it is. It's got like a top and bottom to it, but the majority of it is about decision criteria. And it's kind of, if I sit here and think, how would we have put that document together if we didn't have MEDDICC as a marketing team? It would be very difficult, because where would we even get that from? I know we have point of differentiation, and most companies work what's our difference, but we've broken it down into the 3 different types of decision criteria, and I just don't know where we would have been able to get that information from without MEDDICC.
Yeah, for me, it also goes back to something that you actually said a long time ago. It's like as go-to-market teams and as sellers and as marketeers, we need to stop thinking that our prospects are professional buyers, right? So a buyer's guide, in many ways, I think is typically welcomed with someone who is serious about an initiative, because they in our example, okay, I think that we need to do something with MEDDPICC, but how is completely strange to them, or it might be, right? And I think that translates to the typical environment that our customers have as well. If you're in the SaaS industry, you're selling any sort of technology, that typically stands to be true. And so it's very much a resource to help do education for prospects and to help them form their decision criteria, and obviously influence it a little bit, right? But also just make sure that they can have that cohesive journey that we were talking about just now, right? Because if you don't help that on the front end, that's not going to happen. I think the stat in the industry says that most buyers are 60% on their way before they ever engage with a salesperson, right? Yeah. And I think a resource like this will help them get there in a more efficient way and make that journey better. And the other thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about the influence of this being a common language for our team, we just had someone new joining your team. Someone's looking after demand generation, so shout out to Jen. Immediate impact there, right? But I think in part, aside from her craft and her experience and what she brings and the bar raiser that she is, MEDDICC as a common language, again, really helped us accelerate her ramp time and empower her to make an immediate impact. And I'll give an example. Through data, we want to make sure that we target the right persona. So you want to make sure that someone understands hey, what is a typical champion for us, right? And if we go onto a tool like Sales Navigator, how do we set the settings right so that it's going to work for us? What is a good, ideal prospect profile in our world, right? And all of these things that you can start to, or you can try to start to explain these things, but how are you going to do that if you don't have a common language like MEDDPICC? And then I think the the typical companies that we see, like it's good if you do it within your sales team, but we know like our best customers do it cross-functionally, right? They do it across the go-to-market team. And this is essentially why, because these are like small examples, but it adds up, and it adds up fast if you commit to the journey like that.
I feel like we're giving away trade secrets right now, but I want to give a bit of an anecdote, really. As part of the Marketing Unlocked podcast, I get to speak to CMOs within the industry about their MEDDICC implementation. And I spoke to Mandira at MRI recently. MRI are a customer of ours, and I think I can't remember where the GKO, they call it the growth kickoff. I can't remember where you guys went to for that.
Orlando in Florida.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, Andy made me take a picture with Mickey and Minnie Mouse.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
He begged.
Yeah. So at MEDDICC, there's in the media team, there's 13 of us now with the new addition of Jen. And in the marketing, if you were to split marketing and media, there's 2 marketing people in the media team. And then in terms of products at MEDDICC, I'd probably say we have like one core product, obviously, which is MOS. But if we break down the individual products we probably have about 10 things that we like to talk about and publicize. And I was speaking to Mandira, who attended the growth kickoff, and her marketing team have gone through the masterclass. Mandira is obviously CMO globally, and she has a 180-person marketing team. And she has a 125-person marketing team with over 110 products in their range. And for me, like, if I didn't have the common language and I was managing that many people globally, I think that would be a massive struggle. But Mandira said MEDDICC has enabled her marketing team not only to work more efficiently from a global perspective, but also to work across the customer lifecycle. So now they're working with product directly as a regional marketing team in terms of managing those 100 odd products. So I think it's massively beneficial, and we're seeing it across the industry. So I can imagine for someone like Mandira, creating those buyer guides, creating those customer stories with MEDDICC as a common language is so much easier than trying to do it without. I just couldn't imagine being in her shoes as a 13-person team right now.
Yeah, because it's like I know from my experience, which is nowhere near as extensive as yours in marketing, but that there's there's IDA, right, yeah. Which is has a very purposeful purpose, but it doesn't tie together what we see MEDDICC tying together for the whole go-to-market team, which is that value piece. What problems to be solved, what value do our customers get from solving that problem, and it's like how does it our solution does it, through to which stakeholders care about that value. Because one thing that the industry of sales really gets wrong, and I think this probably is the same in other go-to-market functions, is they think about pain as being this kind of like universal thing. And so it's like, let's say, us as a company, all right, now let's talk about MEDDICC as a company, CEO, CRO, CMO, right? And if we think about something we've bought, right, or something we've done recently, like let's say we bought HubSpot, right? Yeah. Now, I have a very different pain to solve by getting HubSpot, as do you, completely different, right? The same way as the uplift as well. There might be some mutual ones like reporting, visibility, that kind of stuff, but our pain is completely different. Now, in this instance, it's likely that the HubSpot salesperson could be selling to either of you two. It could be selling to me as well, but it's likely that either of you two, maybe both would be their main contact. Now, a great salesperson is going to have both of you as their main contact. But the point is, if the salesperson had met Pim, and Pim's talking about, the current CRM we use doesn't have like great reporting. It's like the UI is not great for updating deals. We can't add new fields for, what CRM our customers, whatever it is. And came to you and was like, look, we're gonna be able to give you great forecast updating. You're gonna be like, okay, well, that's good. I'm interested in the forecast, but what I really care about is my marketing engine, all that kind of stuff. But that people listening will go, yeah, Andy, that's really obvious. But like, how many websites could we go on right now where it would actually really help me in that situation to sort of separate between two people that would be buying the same solution but have completely different pains, completely different solutions? And it's the same in the sales cycle. So that idea of value being the first pillar is really important, but it's not really a pillar. We shouldn't really call it a pillar because it directly overlaps with stakeholders in terms of Who cares about what? And then the next pillar, again, we shouldn't call it that, is process, because different stakeholders are involved in different parts of the process, from the very first bit of interest through to managing the relationship with the customer that you've won. And so those three pillars, I'm going to stick with that. We need to come up with a new name. That's your job, by the way. They overlap, and it's like a Venn diagram. They're constantly just overlapping and changing. And that's the same for the sales process as it is for the positioning, as it is for like the market research, all that sort of stuff. It's I know I've said this before, but it's the classic. The old school marketing, right message, right person, right time. It's message, value, person, stakeholder, time, process. They just overlap perfectly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always love, again, another big thing of MEDDICC and working here is the persona part of marketing, I suppose. Like back when I was doing marketing before, it was just so nitty-gritty in terms of the personality. Where was the person shopping? What car were they buying? And all that sort of stuff. And realistically, none of that really matters. But if you go onto our website now, and I know I keep using our website, I promise it's not like a big sell, but something that I'm quite proud of is we're starting to build these persona pages out. And if you go on at the moment, I think there's 4 pages, and we want to build that out, obviously, for the entire go-to-market team. But as a marketing team, we've been able to use our own process, which would be the 3 whys, but we've been able to, use that with MEDDICC. So we've identified sales enablement leaders, individual contributors, and obviously CROs, for instance, as our top 3 personas. What pain do they have? They all have separate pain. They're all looking for something, different to solve for. And I think that's a big part of what we've been able to do with MEDDICC as well from a marketing perspective.
My favorite anecdote to that is one of our good customers, a company I'd say is somewhere between 100 and 200 million ARR, so well established, great company, who I think we look up to in a lot of ways in terms of their positioning, marketing, execution, all that kind of stuff. But they told us after their first full quarter, Q4, of having MEDDICC implemented in their team with us, they said that they were reviewing data of deals that they had won in Q4. So it's, you're talking a lot of deals. And they said that 89% of deals they won, when they broke down the data of what cohort the champion was, what the persona cohort was. So not necessarily a job role, but in that sort of persona of who was the champion, it was the same one 89% of the time. Basically, 9 out of 10 of the deals, the champion was this particular persona, which is mega to be able to go, that's interesting. But what was, I guess it's a win for them, but it was also a bit of a OMG moment, was that they realized that not only do they not have any persona marketing for this persona, and it's not because they don't have persona marketing, they're very, very good at one of the best I've seen at persona marketing. But they didn't have any persona marketing for this persona because they incorrectly thought this persona was bad for them. They didn't want this person involved because they saw this person as a detractor. They slowed deals down. They were not fans of their solution. And so they had been proactively discouraging the sales team from engaging. There was even anecdotes of where SDRs were not getting paid on the sales accepted leads were not getting accepted because of that. And of course, without the common language, because you could say, well, champion isn't specific to MEDDICC, but it is because they're our customer, they have a very clear criteria of a champion. They have to have power and influence, they have to have a vested interest in our success, and they have to be selling internally for us. So every single champion that's qualified with the way that we implement MEDDPICC will have a very clear criteria. So they could say very strongly that the champion is this person. And the good news from this story is, of course, being the great company they were able to flip it around. I think they've even got a community. I was looking at this the other day. So this persona they had no marketing for. Of course, now they have pages on the website. They have collateral for them, but they even have a community they've built a community for this particular part of business, which they wouldn't have been able to do without MEDDICC. There's no way they would just not known. They just wouldn't have been able to capture that data at that scale.
Yeah.
Such a cool story, isn't it? I'm immediately thinking hey, is there a persona for us out there like that we're currently not free? And this is the beauty of it, because obviously we use it proactively, but it can be used to reactively look into data from a last quarter. We did that internally, right? To see hey, what did go well, what can we do better, and this is something that can be part of something like that. But for me, it goes back to the inability to do these things if you don't have a common language across the go-to-market team. And you said something in the beginning. You were like, and I don't think that these were your exact words, but it's like, it's not rocket science. I think that the same thing you would say, like typically the best salespeople and go-to-market professionals, once they go through some of our programs, they would also say, like, let's assume that they're not familiar with MEDDPICC just yet. Like, oh yeah, like this is how I already used to, engage with customers and how I used to sell. I just didn't know that there was a name for it. And that's like a pretty big portion of all of this, right? Because if you think about some very talented and high potential talents in an organization, like that's all good. But as long as they keep on using different languages and different ways to communicate about, well, I'm not going to say, well, maybe I'm going to say pillars. Can I? You're never going to unlock the potential to do things like what you just said here.
Yeah. I agree. I think one of the things that's interesting is we've been talking quite high level, haven't we? We've been sort of at the very sort of the strategic level. But I'd love to zoom in a little bit now and hear about like how some of the things your team has been doing to get kind of more tactical with using the language to maybe inform some of the decisions you make, some of the activities you, sort of the campaigns you promote, all that kind of stuff. I'd love to hear if that's something you're doing.
Yeah, like one of the things I was just thinking about, and I think this ties into to your question, is it's not specifically down to marketing, but it comes back to having a culture of trust. Mm-hmm. And having like a really good culture and actually implementing MEDDICC the right way. So I was just thinking then in terms of the visibility and the data, like having knowing where to go and look for that, or having the relationship to be able to speak to the CRO or speak to the sales teams or the AEs and ask them and find these things out. Because as a marketing team, like we can't just sit back and expect to have this information delivered to our door sort of thing. We need to be like working with the rest of the go-to-market team to find that out. So I think a big thing that we've implemented within the media team, and Pim hopefully will back me up on this, but we've started to attend like the NBM, so new business meetings with customers or prospects, because we want to find out these different personas, these different pain points, like what is it people are looking for. And typically the people that we have the new business meetings with, they might have one pain and actually they come away with like 3 pains and that sort of stuff. So that's like a big thing for us, because it can inform like our social messaging, our website messaging, our campaign messaging. And then obviously we've been joining the deal reviews as well. So obviously we are huge preachers of deal reviews, but we've not limited that just to the revenue team. It's like I think the whole company is invited to our deal reviews, yep. Right? And it's a big thing for us for the media team to go to those as well. Not only are we more aware of like what's happening from a revenue perspective in terms of the deals, the customers that we're working with, but it's like, how can we immediately support what's going on? Is there a blocker that we can support with? Is there something that we could do better in our messaging or our marketing that, might prevent this from happening again in the future? Is it something like the buyer's guide, that sort of stuff? So just being like very tactical with how we spend our time, and that collaboration is like super important. And I think the other thing, a big campaign that we worked on recently, and a lot of the CMOs that I've been speaking to, this is very new for me, but we've brought our SDR into the media team, which is we've like I've never had an SDR reporting to me before, so that's all new. But that's now like sort of almost bridged a gap between like the revenue and the media team. So there's lots we're doing at the moment.
And I think that's such an interesting one, the age-old debate that we don't have time to get into now about SDRs reporting to marketing or revenue. There's obviously pros and cons, but I think that what I always say when I'm asked about this question is it comes down to your organizational setup. And for us, and I think this is actually something I think will be more of a thing if people embrace the full potential of MEDDPICC, which is that the go-to-market function just becomes so much more cohesive, so much more together. And so, the idea of an SDR reporting into marketing actually makes a lot of sense, because all they're basically doing is going, thank you very much, marketing, for building this brilliant, easy to understand proposition that really illustrates what pain our solution solves, gives me great examples of where we've done that, the without us state and the with us state and the utopia that's happened afterwards and how we do that. So I can now just very easily just lift that across. And, with our MEDDICC value proposition with the M1s, M2s and M3s, that's just perfect, because now via an M1, which you talked about earlier, this proposition of basically what is our value proposition, but it's made up of pain we solve, how we solve the pain, the decision criteria, the value in solving that pain in the metrics, and who cares, champion economic buyer, who do we beat with this, being like this beautiful encapsulation of a use case, of a success story. You can give that to an SDR and then go, great, I can go and talk to all these companies because I know that message will resonate. Mm-hmm. You could give it to a channel person because they say, look, I want to be introduced to this organization, and here's why. Here's this perfect little anecdote, if you like, of why that organization's talked to us, which is in a language that the channel person can understand. And every person that goes to marketing, it just makes everything so much more cohesive. So of course it makes sense that that the SDR team should report into marketing, because they are just an extension. They are just a channel of marketing all of a sudden, which makes perfect sense. And then there is the issue that stands that people rightly are concerned about, where SDRs wouldn't report into the sales function, is because there would be some sort of gap in communication, gap in process. But of course, if you have a common language, really working as a common language, there is no gap anymore. Everyone's just together. And so it's not a matter of, sometimes people like to use like the relay race analogy of passing the baton. Well, there is no race, because you're all running in lockstep together. There's no sort of passing the baton, because if there is, it's just like you're all in the same line. You're just passing it from one person to the next. So that works really well. What about what you were telling me the other day about how you were looking? Your team was looking at opportunities in MEDDICC operating system to inform what you felt was like, as much as you can go and look at live deals. You said something about looking at opportunities in MOS.
Yeah, so I mean, we're very lucky in the sense that we get to use MOS on like a daily basis. So that's obviously where we have our opportunity manager, but we have so many other cool products in MOS. But from a media perspective, it's not that, again, it comes back to this culture of trust. We're not going in there and checking on the deals to see, have the sales team filled it in, have they actually put an M1 in, or a metric, some metrics in, or if they put any decision criteria in. We're not going in to check for that to, have the sales teams done their job. We're going in to look to see how that can inform what we're doing. So not necessarily us needing to have that face-to-face time with the sales team. We can go in and look at this like open platform and find that information out for ourselves. And there might be just stuff in there that we've not really thought of, like a different decision criteria that we could add. And guess what? We can now add that to the buyer's guide. Yeah. So for us, it's like really important to be on top of that and to just be keeping an eye on what's going on within MOS.
Yeah, a great thing you just got me thinking about there was the learning is to be part of MOS. And as in research to that recently, where we're recording a new program, I was trying to find best practice for, if you imagine the education screen of where you're teaching somebody something, where should the presenter stand if they're a small version of the overall screen? And so I went down this rabbit hole of looking at, I won't say the company names because I'm not trying to shame them, but like, household names of universities, colleges, some of apparently the best online education entities there is. And I said to you folks, and I came on and I was like, the quality of content here, I'm sure the education, like the level of like education's high, but in terms of like engaging, like I find this so boring. It's so plain looking. There's nothing engaging. There's no stories. There's no anecdotes. It doesn't come to life. And it made me come back to you folks and say, I know we always talk about us and how important, what our biggest strength when we're comparing, when our customers are comparing us to other MEDDICC training companies. Is about how engaging and rich the content is. And I think we've always felt that because we see, we get that feedback, of course. But I had never taken into account just how low the bar is for the whole education industry. And what that told me was, wow, from a decision criteria perspective, from a pain perspective, our prospective customers are going to have a much lower opinion than I thought they would of what online education is. Yeah. And so we had this conversation where I was like, in this buyer's guide, we need to, I know we were looking at how a strength is and how important it is from the buyer's perspective that you have highly engaging content. But I was just thinking about it because, we make that joke about our competitors' videos being like, airline safety videos, right? But I thought that was just so they would go and go, okay, well, let's go and have a look at the competitive. I know, yes, that is not very engaging, not very exciting, but it's bigger, isn't it? And so why this is important to this conversation is because I was just able to say to you, the pain that our customers are likely to come in feeling about this pain that doesn't exist until you mention to them that the training is on demand, and they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I want that because everyone just thinks of those like security, safety, onboarding videos and all that sort of stuff. So I was able to relay that back to you. So not only did you both understood exactly why I was talking about this is the pain, and then therefore they're worried about the negative metrics being that people don't watch it, don't engage with it, don't learn from it, and therefore the decision criteria needs to be highly engaging. You're able to go, and that needs to go in the buyer's guide, and that in everything we do. So it was just a common language and just in how we were able to talk about that one thing.
I think even to your point, like your team goes into MOS as well, right? And they pick up on things and they get inspiration from there as to the things that they should be building. So if you look at the media team, they get ideas for like, hey, we should produce content out of this because it will be useful in educating prospects and like in a sales cycle with a customer. And so Ellie, who's like behind the screens today, like she would reach out to the entire revenue team to make sure that we can capture content exactly for that purpose. So these are like two very specific examples of where a common language with a system underpinning how you bring that to life is really empowering the go-to-market team to pull together. And again, like I feel like we're going to sound like a broken record a little bit, but truly create like that cohesive experience that keeps on getting better every day.
What's really cool about what you've just said is by the time this episode launches, we'll have our new ad out. And after you brought that pain to mine and Pim's attention, we decided to create an airline safety video ad comparing our content to Dual Force Airlines. So I'm really excited for that to come out. So you'll be able to see that at the same time.
I love that. But what I'd love just to wrap up with is you as a senior marketing professional, tons of experience, you have your podcast, talk to other CMOs. What's the thing you would say to maybe a CMO or a marketing professionals tuned into this because they've heard about MEDDICC or maybe their company's considering MEDDICC? What's the thing you would say to them in lieu of your experience to kind of give them confidence that their company's on the right path by evaluating MEDDICC?
I think a lot of marketers will get this, and maybe other departments might not like what I'm about to say, but in my opinion, like marketing teams should own the customer journey because they touch so many different parts of it. And I think as a marketing team, how can we, support the entire go-to-market team if we're not speaking that same language, from awareness right down to renewal or down to advocacy, that sort of stuff. Like we need to be touching all of that. And if we're all working at different methodologies or different frameworks or different languages, if I'm speaking French, you're speaking Spanish, you're speaking Portuguese, like we're not going to be able to understand each other. So I think if your company is looking at MEDDICC and you're a marketing professional right now, like embrace it, because you can still do everything you're doing now, but with much more cohesion, like we've said. So
in my mind, I was just going to a scenario where you and I would have like our daily meetup, right, in the morning, and I would just be speaking Dutch and Jess would be speaking English, and like the conversation doesn't go anywhere. Like that's kind of what that can feel like, right? If you don't have it.
That's what happens every morning, Pim. So.
I mean, we'll wrap up there, but it's a really great final point. I've not heard you say it quite like that before, but this idea of like the customer journey, if we really zoom out on that, we've got at the start, like I said, products doing it the way that they're doing from very manual work of like research, very manual. There's no information loop that's happening, and then marketing picking up that product and that proposition, that solution, and then trying to apply best practice to make sure it sort of pops in the customer's mind. And then the sales motion starts with SDRs trying to take what they look at the proposition marketing's put together. Okay, how can I turn that into outbound? Channel look at it going, okay, how can I make my partner at a different company that's dealing with loads of other different propositions understand that? How can I wrap that up. Then the sales team gets it, and the same thing. But the sales team doesn't, if you listen to some of the advice in the industry, it's like the sales team has to go from one methodology to another framework to another language, and like they are passing that baton left and right, and the customer's left thinking, well, hang on a minute, well, like you said, talking different languages. And then we talk about handover to customer success. My experience is that's not something that happens like often, let alone well. So then that happens, and then we know how hard it is post-sale to stay engaged with the important stakeholders and remember what was the real reason why they've implemented the solution, the pains they're solving, the value they've promised, all that sort of stuff. And so it's just like this it's just these islands of disconnected languages, whereas what we're saying is we are capturing the value that we can bring and capturing which stakeholders care about that value and why, and we're going, right, this is the value, this is life without us, this is life with us, here's the value between the two, here's the delta between the two, here's how we do it with decision criteria, here's who cares about this. Right, there you go to market team, use that back end as you wish to go and to make it into your own messages. By the time it gets to the sales team, it means that there's an interested customer, right? Prospective customer. And they're interested because they've been told about these M1s, which are the use cases. So the salesperson go, right, well, that resonated with you. I can see why that resonated with you, that resonated. Let's personalize these to your interests. Let's make this, instead of it being about that successful customer that you were interested in, you loved the story, but let's make this about you now. We make it about them. We build the business case, which is the M2, the personalized value story. And then we work with the customer because it's not always easy. There'll be some back and forth. We've got to get those numbers right. We've got to get their consensus. We've got to get their buy-in, that they believe in this proposition, this proposal as much as we do. We win the deal because we've partnered with them. And the M2 turns into an M3, which is exactly the same thing as an M2, but now it's our job, and I say our because I'm talking about us and the customer, to deliver on those goals we set for ourselves. We aim to deliver those goals. When we achieve those goals together, right, we may set new goals, higher goals, but the most important thing for the go-to-market team is that M3 that has been achieved, that's been confirmed, goes back all the way to the start to inform the product team. This is why we're winning. It informs the marketing team. Here's another example of why that use case resonated in the market. Add it to the M1. Let's get some more power, more anecdotes behind this. And so it just builds up momentum. So the more M1s you create, the more M2s you create, the more M3s you create. You get this cycle flowing round and round and round. Nothing I've said there to any marketing person listening to this will be alien. None of those ideas will be tactics they haven't thought of before. What's been missing is a common language that is focused on the whole go-to-market team to bring it together. And that is why I am as excited as I have been since doing anything with MEDDICC, with our new MEDDICC Value program that's just around the corner, that I've got so much of you two to thank for your insights of how you work day to day, and the people that you've introduced me to in your industry, your peers that have the same experiences and challenges that we are ready to solve. So
yeah, it's going to be
I feel
magic.
like I just got up on a soapbox there, but I don't normally plug on any of our podcasts, but it's because you're here, your marketing, we're getting a bit pluggy. But what do you think?
I think it's going to be amazing, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to MEDDICC Value. Like, when's it out? Come on, when's it ready?
Yeah, well, I'm working on it. We're close. We can see we're weeks away. I'll say that much. I'll commit to that much. Weeks away, and it's very, very exciting. But with that in mind, we better get back to it.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me. Like, I hope it's not going to be another year before I'm invited back.
That's it. You're a regular feature now, and I have to say, nailed it as the Peggy Olsen today.
Thank you very much.
Nailed it.
Thank you. Shame about Pim's outfit, but
What's wrong with my outfit?
I'm joking.
Oh no!
I'm gonna wear it anyway.
Okay, let's wrap.